Okay, theoretically we're live.
Okay.
I haven't gone in and done YouTube yet. Okay, we're live.
We're live.
I haven't gone in and done YouTube yet.
Stand by.
Okay, we're live.
We're live.
I haven't gone in and done YouTube yet.
Stand by. Okay, so I've sent her the instructions. Hi, Mina. Hello, everyone. We had excitement today. Unexpected excitement. Poor little Yvonne got stuck in the snow, and I had to go rescue her.
We're online.
That was Yvonne.
Let's make sure we aren't eating things that are making too much noise. Okay.
Yeah. Bowls are, you know where the bowls are. So, Happy New Year. This is the first live broadcast of the year. Last week I did post a message, a New Year's message that says, get off your rear ends and do your spiritual work, because that's what you're here for.
Mina, get down.
Mina, Sikla Mina, little shooting star, really likes the altar tonight. We'll talk about the altar in a little bit. But don't get too close to that flame, little kitty.
Get out, Mina.
This is a good time. Let me see if she got it. Whoops. We have a new watcher. And I'm trying to make sure she's got the instructions on how to find us on YouTube. So,
why don't you just quickly give the instructions again for anybody watching to, if you want to log on, then you can make comments and to like our page. So
why don't you just switch the cameras and let you do that? There's a YouTube link that we send in an email that's available on Facebook, and hopefully you're watching it and got that far. Then there should be a chat feature, but you only get to chat if you are logged in to either a Gmail/Google account or a specific YouTube account. I guess YouTube bought Google or Google bought YouTube, and they're one and the same these days. And when you do that, then you get to make comments and participate. We definitely endeavor to watch the chat feed and see when we have questions versus snide remarks that need no comment from me. And we get equal amounts of both. So if you have a question, please just say question and we'll get to it as quickly as we can. So here at the beginning of calendar year 2019, on our currently many times modified and known to be incorrect calendar, this is a good time for a short refresh of what we covered in the last year. Hi, Yvonne.
Hi.
You're alive.
Yeah.
If you sit at the other end of the sofa, we'll see you.
I can sit here.
Okay. We can move cameras. It's also a good time to talk about what's coming up. And then I'll have a few more things to say about what's coming up in a different point of view later. So, you have somehow stumbled into Toltec Discussions with Golden Eagle. I am your host, Golden Eagle, and hi, we're a little late tonight. The purpose of this broadcast is that this is one of my avenues of teaching the higher spiritual philosophies, specifically as taught in this traditional Toltec lineage. That sounds simple. It's not. the Toltec lineage is a very elegant and complex lineage of philosophy and science and art and healing that dates back at least 12 to 15,000 years. It has spread to multiple continents over that 15,000 year period, and on at least several times has gone around the world and ended up here in North America again. And all of us Toltec buds kind of recognize each other and hang out together. And we're here to do the main purpose of the Toltec philosophies, which is the transformation or transcendence of humanity. That's it. What that means is we are looking at this holographic projection that we call reality, sometimes known in some Toltec writings as video game Earth, and we're trying to go up a level in video game Earth. The universe is actually a lot more complex and at the same time elegant as well as chaotic than most people realize. We have within us a filter that limits what we call reality to what is essentially both a minimum and a maximum. It's the bare minimum we need to be able to function, and it's the maximum we can handle at any given time. And by we, I mean both individually as well as collectively, the human race. This filter is what we use to alter reality. Going up a level in the video game Earth, or achieving a state of spiritual transcendence, or liberation, or ascension, or enlightenment. Not really enlightenment. Enlightenment is kind of a lower level skill. All those other terms are referring to modifying your filter so that there's a quantum leap in what's coming through and your new version of reality. When that happens, just like on a video game, you go up to a new level and there's new creatures that want to eat you. There's new treasures to find. There's new beings that you have to decide, are they potential allies or are they enemies? And they could start out pretending to be either and end up being the opposite. So that's part of your level of discernment in the new level of the video game. That filter is referred to in the Toltec lineage and the Toltec system of philosophy as our assemblage point. There's a small branch of some of the ancient Hindu philosophies that refer to a portion of that, but otherwise the Toltecs are really the only system that has correctly and accurately identified this and teaches the techniques to work with it, at least the totality of it. So that's the background. And everything I've just said only makes sense if you understand the difference between doing higher spiritual work and doing what we call a horizontal path of spiritual work. And both are important and both are necessary. And the horizontal path is a prerequisite to the vertical path, the higher path. Higher means higher frequencies from a purely engineering physics point of view. It does not mean superior in any way. The she's trying it on her phone.
Vivian.
Yeah.
I think the other message that we want to give is about refreshing your screen.
I've already given that one.
Yeah.
And YouTube has a limitation. If you haven't found it, is sometimes when you first go to our site, it's sitting there. You have to hit refresh once we've gone live, and then there should be a screenshot of what my blue shirt and blue jeans today. I tried the other lighter blue shirt and it just wasn't working. I had to do a wardrobe change at the last minute. So, and when that happens, you click. There's a little in red print. It says live. You click that, and voila, you should be hearing and seeing and everything. And sometimes it just doesn't work. So, that's the big picture. So, towards that end, once you're on a path to do all that, it's still possible to be distracted by all the shinies, all the feel-good stuff, and all the all the distractions, all the things that you're being pulled in the wrong direction for by a lot of different beings. There's a category of beings in the universe who are going to be really thrilled if most of humanity never wakes up. And the internet is full of websites that will tell you verbatim, downloaded from Great and Glorious Ascended Master number 427, that, and fill in the blank on all the names, that here's the truth of how that's happening. And all the stories are similar and no two are exactly the same. I think there's truth to be found in the simple reality that there are beings who are taking advantage of keeping humanity as a whole in the dark. And they're really happy to keep us here, whether it's short-term or long-term financial gain here in the Malkuthian world, whether it's slave labor, whether it's higher or lower energy beings stirring the pot and living off the energy of our emotions, like anger and fear are two particularly good ones. Sexual energies, so the rampant glut of pornography can potentially be used against humanity, not because there's anything morally right or wrong about it, although by some definitions you could say, yeah, maybe it's morally wrong, but that's not why they care. That's not why they're pushing it. They're pushing it because of the energies it's creating in humanity that they can feed off of. So keep your energy to yourself. It's yours. And all of those reasons, there might be some truth in all of them. And the bottom line is they're distracting you from waking up. So the Toltec work, the Toltec philosophies, is based on a philosophy, a philosophical system that applies to the whole culture. Some of you who are students have heard this. Some of you new ones may not have. And that system is called the Toltec, which starts with the premise that the purpose of society is transcendence of the human spirit. And subdivided in there is a pyramid. Vivian's on? Yay! Welcome, Vivian. Cool.
We have 8 watching, and Patty from down below is on. Patty from up above is on.
Cool.
Sarah's here. Maria is here. And so we have our universal consciousness.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. When you log in, you get to have comments and questions and insults. I don't mind any of all of that. It means you're engaging. And my purpose of being here is to get you to engage. If I challenge your pre-held beliefs, good. If I don't, hang around a little while because I'll get to you soon. So this Toltec Yodel philosophy is, how do you design a perfectly balanced, harmonious society where everyone works together to create spiritual transcendence for all of humanity? That's a book that I'm working on. I have 3 other books in various stages of publication, but they're done. But the next big writing project of mine is my version of how to save the world by promoting the Toltec Yodel philosophy. And this isn't new, as I mentioned. It's many thousands of years old. So to do all that, to accomplish that, we talk about your true will, your true purpose. This is the one divine purpose that you are here for. Which leads us to one of the great fallacies being propagated in our culture these days, which all revolves around the notion that you don't have a true purpose. You don't have a spiritual divine purpose because you aren't divine. You aren't a spiritual being. You're nothing but smart mud that's learned how to build McDonald's and create freeway traffic jams. And someday you're hoping to aspire to that, if there's anything really to aspire to, but we're not even going to go there. That's what society wants you to believe. But hey, look at the shinies and oh, it's the playoffs. Probably for some sport. I don't think it's hockey playoffs yet, and we just had baseball, so it's probably something else, right? You see all kinds of people passionate and mad about the playoffs. Ask them who won the playoffs last year. Not this year, last year. They won't remember because it's not important. Your true will is something that you knew once. You knew it before you were born. You knew it right after you were born. Unfortunately, these human primate machines we're driving around can't be born fully developed. They're born tiny, 6, 7 pounds sometimes, no more, maybe 8 or 10 if in rare occurrences. And the nervous system isn't fully developed. The musculature isn't fully developed. You can't talk. You can't read Robert Frost poetry. You got to wait years for that development to be done, to give you the capability to engage with this physical world and then do your true will. Except that acclimatization process of learning a language, spending time foraging for food by screaming a lot, and waiting for your nervous system to develop, somewhere in there we forget why we came. And if you grow up in modern American culture, modern European culture, modern any kind of culture, it's been carefully programmed to help you forget and keep you from finding out what your true purpose is. Now, though, we have ways of getting around that. We have what are called esoteric schools that teaches ancient knowledge of how to connect with your higher spiritual being, your essence, and the guide that was assigned to you at birth, actually before. We call that in this lineage your holy guardian angel. And we use the word holy because it is a sacred trust from God, the universe, whatever term you like, and you to come here into the physical and do things that not even God can do from the spiritual realms. The purpose of human life is not to get back. Getting back is easy into the spirit worlds. Getting back after you had done everything you came here to do, that's the challenge. So finding out your true will is a lot easier if you make contact, conscious contact, to the point of having a conversation, just like we're having here, with your holy guardian angel and say, yo, what's up? What's my true will? Oh, go do this. Okay. And after a little while, you're going to find out, wait a minute, that can't be the whole thing. And then say, no, now go do this. And you realize you've given your true will one major stepping stone at a time. And when you achieve a certain level of preparation, then you start to get it 2 or 3 steps at a time. And there's a lot of reasons for that, why you don't get everything at once. One is it's complicated, and you have to go through an awareness development. We're sending our awareness to the gym, just like we send our bodies to the gym. Except those of us who live on the farm, and our workout is crawling around in frozen muck to pull people out of ditches late at night in the dark. So,
Yeah.
I'm not the one who got stuck. I'm the one who got you unstuck.
Mommy, I smell those brownies.
Okay.
Ooh, I don't know if anybody online caught that, but apparently after the discussion tonight, we get brownies. That's the incentive for coming here live.
Or getting stuck in the snow.
Yeah, she braved this slush. Yes, she got stuck. Yes, she called the right person. Yes, she got out, and she's still here doing her will. So, good on you. The cat's name, for those of you who are new, and I know we have a few, is Seat Lamina. It's a Nahuatl word that means shooting star. And she loves all things spiritual. She loves climbing around on her altar. And we'll talk more about the altar shortly. No, that's just not going to stay. So, in a spiritual, oh yeah, we got to fix that. In a spiritual batch of work, you got a match over there? What we're doing is we need to make contact with our holy guardian angel who tells us our true will and then how to do it. There are techniques that can be learned that make all that possible. Any legitimate higher level spiritual system of philosophy should teach you those. The first thing they should do is tell you that that is a skill you need to acquire, and they should have techniques for helping you do it. If you ask the question to a potential teacher, oh no, you aren't worthy yet to know your true will. You aren't worthy to talk to the higher level beings. That's what I'm here for as your teacher. I'll take care of you. Run away. Any version of that is bogus. Every teacher should be working to help you develop the skills that you no longer need a teacher. Well, we all go back and check in on when new things come up. But I'm in contact with most of my teachers I've had over the years. And I'm grateful for that. But on a day-to-day basis, we who are the suckers who drew the short straw and agreed to be spiritual teachers, we have developed those skills. We have our own higher plane contacts that we use to help you. One of the little quirks about Toltecs is that we have found over the centuries and the millennia that it's easier to do all this stuff if you work in a small group. We refer to that as a Toltec party. There's synergy and the sharing of our energy fields and the polishing of and refining of our energy fields. And that goes faster and it gets you further down the path faster when you have a group and you're getting honest feedback. And it's not always the teacher. In fact, it's often the fellow students that are saying, yo, what's up? What are you doing that for? And you go, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't do that. The group work is crucial because that's how whole societies achieve that pyramid of transcendence. So over the last year, we've had some classes, we've had some workshops, you've had homework. Everybody's homework is due today, by the way.
Okay.
Some of you have given it. I got it from a couple of you. In these schools, these various esoteric schools, the Toltec is just one possible format. For some of us, it is the one that we have proverbially nailed ourselves to the cross of. And like I said, we have some unique differences in the Toltec, one of which is the assemblage point and how to work it. Another is the Akadua energy, what we now call the Akadua energy. Every shaman everywhere has some kind of subtle energy / magical force. In some cultures it's called chi, in others prana, in some it was referred to as the vital force. It's been rediscovered over and over throughout time. Virtually every culture, indigenous culture on the planet, has a name for it. And some of us, some of our lineages, like the Toltecs, have refined it far beyond what it is naturally. So in terms of power, reliability, control, the ability to use it both for healing purposes, spiritual growth and development purposes, for any number of those things. What we have in the Toltec pantheon is far more powerful. And I'd been doing subtle energies 15 years before I found the Toltec. And once I had the Akadua, I did more progress in a month than I had in 15 years. And then I knew I had the real deal. And it was that, it was like a bell going off. This is the one. This is the one that I get brownies. So we have that in the Toltec work. And we use it. It's not just for healing anymore. It's for spiritual growth and transcendence of all of humanity. And we use and train for working with the construct that we call the human collective consciousness. Sometimes it's called, and in my opinion erroneously, but by many authors, the human collective unconscious. Meaning people aren't aware of it, therefore it's below our conscious level of awareness, and it's unconscious and it's outside our control. Sort of like breathing, right? They tell you, oh, that's part of our autonomic nervous system, we can't control it. But we can stop breathing for a while. Then our body starts to scream and we have to go back to breathing. But shamans and meditators have learned to control heart rate and many other so-called autonomic functions. Even that skill, though, isn't the the target, isn't the end target. But just like that ability to possibly change your heart rate through meditation, we can learn to change the human collective consciousness. And by making it part of our awareness, we take conscious control of the collective consciousness. So that's one of the areas of work that we have going forward this year. Is we're developing a series of workshops / seminars targeted at the public on consciousness and humanity and how we can use that to change the world, combined with the Toltec knowledge of the Akadwa and the assembly point. That's one of our main focuses. The homework I alluded to, just as a reminder for those who owe me something on that, is we're going to pick a problem. You look around the world and you see a problem and say, that needs to be fixed. Darn it. And just like Buckminster Fuller was fond of saying, you don't fix a problem by fixing the problem. You fix a problem by creating something new that makes the old method obsolete. So the long-term homework those of us in the school are doing is we're each picking a pet problem and we're creating a new model that makes the old model obsolete. So you don't like getting stuck on the freeway coming up the road late at night because every other idiot on the road doesn't know how to pull off to the shoulder and put their chains on, and Caltrans doesn't know how to plow the roads. And yeah, I wrote a letter to the editor because you do have to call people on their BS when appropriate. But that's all I'm going to do about trying to fix Caltrans. My objective is to make Caltrans obsolete. I want my Jetsons levitating hovercraft car. I don't care about chains and semis getting stuck. If I have a Jetsons hovercraft car, I go over the snow, I go over the semis, and we just go where we need to go. That's the new model I'm promoting. Jetsons now is my mantra, my theme. You all do remember the Jetsons cartoons, right?
Right.
Yep.
Yeah? Okay. Good. I'm not the only old geezer here. So, right now, when you look around the world, there's a lot of chaos. And that's not an accident. Politicians and those who pull their puppet strings, you can collectively refer to them as the puppet masters, they have deliberately created this chaos to hide what they're trying to do, to remake the world in a, what's the good model? And more of a 1984-like model. 1984, of course, refers to George Orwell's novel that is part of the homework from last year, which I hope you've all finished. If you've never read it, or if it's been more than 10 years since you read it, one of your extra assignments is to go read 1984 again. It's actually faster than I thought. I did this over the course of November and early December. I reread 1984, and George Orwell intended it as a warning. It seems some other people got a hold of his novel, however, and used it as an instruction manual. So we need to make all of the thought structures and social control methods being talked about in 1984 and being used by our politicians. We just have to make all of those obsolete. I mean, they want to come and lock you up and put you in jail. You know, and they actually have what is called the thought police. So if you ever heard that term, it comes from 1984. So when the thought police come knocking on the door, and this is the thought police, and we're going to break down the door and haul you to jail, you can just say, oh, okay. And I dream a genie, you poof out and you're somewhere else. And they bust down the door and there's nobody home. And so forth. Basic shamanic voyaging. So this world of chaos does make change possible and easier than a completely static world, which was always the model that was most revered in ancient China. Oh, we don't like change. This weekend when we were teaching the Akadwa class, I mentioned that the favorite insult in ancient China was the curse, may you live in interesting times. They didn't like change. However, as we all know, change is inevitable. Now, the chaos that's being deliberately created is being taken advantage by one side. The guys playing the black chess pieces, but those of us playing the white chess pieces, we have the ability to take advantage of that chaos for our own demented purposes, like freeing humanity from slavery and proceeding forward with human transcendence. And that's our objective. So over the course of this year, our Esoteric School's main project is working on the plans for how to create new models that make old problems obsolete and then get the word out. So that's where we're at, is people are supposed to have picked their project. And some of you have, and you've told me about it or sent me emails, and good on you. And the rest of you, please do that. All we're trying to do is save humanity, so hopefully you can take a few minutes and further that cause. Coupled with all of that is the fact that this exact time frame we're living in has been foretold by prophets and seers for many thousands of years. We have volumes after volumes of prophecies from many different cultures saying, yeah, this is coming, and now here it is. And what the answer is, according to some, is a return to small groups living locally and sustainably and working for something higher. Which is exactly the model of the Toltec philosophies. This is the great work on the, I'm not going to call it the macrocosmic because there's a version above that. I'm not going to call it the microcosmic because that would be more inside each of us. So what would be the good term? It's below the macro and above the micro. The medial cosmic level. The macrocosmic level has to do with subjects that are beyond the scope today. Just know that our version of the great work as we best understand it here to help humanity and our living planet Earth evolve forward is also going on at the level of the universe. That's the best way to describe it. We'll talk about that more another time. So anything other than helping you stay alive and helping you develop the skills you need to contact your holy guardian angel and do your true will is optional. it would fall into a category I would call interesting, perhaps, but not important. The Akadwa part of that is an energy source, it's an intelligence source, it's a communications tool, it's a manifestation / alchemical tool. It's so many things. It's our link to the higher planes. It's our link to control the assemblage point. It's our link to bring about a higher level of reality and evolution for the human race. Everything else in your life is spurious. It's chasing the shiny objects of no value. And because of what's going on in the state of development of the human race, the state of development of the planet, this unique time frame we are in, which I've talked about regarding the Earth and the location of our solar system in its orbit around the galaxy, we are at a crucial time. It's time to get serious. The truth is, in the past, for most of recorded human history, there has been a lot of time periods where esoteric schools were hidden. You didn't know they existed.
Mm.
There's other times where you knew they existed and you could go knock on the door, and just like that scene at the beginning of the original movie that was the pilot for the TV series Kung Fu, you hung out at the door and the old monk would look out and decide who was worthy and who wasn't, and the ones that didn't fail the first test would be brought in and introduced to the head lama and offered tea. And everybody except one guy gulps it down hurriedly, and the other one waits. And the others drink their tea and are taken out and thrown out back into the cold, wild world. And the old monk says, "My son, why don't you drink? After you, venerable grandfather." And then goes on to a conversation like, well, where did you learn your manners? You do this and this. And he got to stay. He's the one who became Kwai Chang King. And if that hadn't happened, we wouldn't have had the TV show. But there was always, and is still, tests for worthiness. And scenes like that are a pure dramatization. By the time you get to knocking on the door, either somebody already knows you're coming and they already knows if you're worthy. We get told by our higher plane contacts that, yeah, so-and-so's coming, and if they ask, they get in. Yeah, so-and-so's coming, and if they knock and ask, they're not worthy. Oh, okay. And sometimes they knock, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes they ask, and sometimes they don't. So it's handled differently than the movie version. But the world is changing, and sometimes the schools are available to you, sometimes they're invisible, and only if you've proven yourself worthy to the point that it's visible on the higher planes will a school come knocking at your door. And this is where some of these old wise tales about esoteric schools come from, is, yeah, if they come knocking and offer, they'll only do it once. That was captured very well in the movie The Matrix, right? When Neo's computer finally gave him the message, follow the white rabbit down the rabbit hole, and then he finally meets Morpheus after a long circuitous course of events, and he says, you take the red pill, we show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. You take the blue pill, you wake up, and you'll never hear of us again. This is your chance. Take it or leave it. Right now, I'm able to sit here and tell you that we have that offer open. And here in the first few months of this year is a good time to start, in this school anyway, the higher esoteric work. There's always good times to start, and there's bad times to start. Doesn't mean you won't succeed, it's just it's not as easy. And there's good times to leave. If you finish a batch of work and say, you know what, I think I'm done. And then there's bad times to leave. So even if you want off the boat, if you're in the middle of the rapids, that's a bad time to get off. So there came a point last year when I told people we're heading into a period of time where it's not going to be a good time to start. And so for probably the last half of last year was not a good time to start. And you see, we didn't really have many people start in the last half of last year. Well, the first half or so, maybe a little less, maybe a little more of this year, was a good time to start. And if you've been doing your spiritual work as best you know it, and you think you're ready for something more, and you don't know what, but you really like the Akadwa, and that's real, that's powerful, that's coming from somewhere, and you want to know more, this is a good time to start. The truth is, depending on which way the world goes, there may come a time in the next 2 or 3 years where esoteric schools everywhere are told to close the door and the ship is sailing and you're going with whatever crew you've got and we're not going to make ourselves known. I actually hope, no, something's going to happen. I hope it's not as severe as that. I hope we're more successful in these next 2 years at making progress. I could see it going either way, though. So what we do here is we teach a lot of classes and workshops. Some of them are a day or a half day. Some of them might be a weekend. Some of them might last a week. And they cover a variety of these skills I've alluded to, concerning shamanism, concerning higher esoteric skills. This altar we built today, I had 2 people, Bonnie and Melody, who were working on it. And it's designed to channel a very specific category of energy. And every time you come here, when we're doing these discussions, the altar will be different. There'll be different energies. There's something else I'm trying to impart. And as a result, the altar changes. The altar is simply a lens. It has a lot of crystals on it, has other things on it, and it's, as a lens, it's intended to focus. And part of what it's in focusing is it's also an interdimensional communications portal. These are all things you probably didn't know about an altar. And it focuses our attention and it communicates a certain energy from above out into this room and back is the way this communication works. It will convey emotions. It's just like the science of feng shui, which is the art and science of the movement of energy and the space that the altar is in, the space of your home, the condition of that space is crucial to you being able to do your highest level spiritual work. If you've never read or studied feng shui, there are two things I recommend. One is read a book on it. Get at least one book on feng shui and read it and keep it as a reference. And the second thing is, and probably the most important of the two, is work with someone who is very, very good or better at feng shui and learn it firsthand. That's the best way. Failing that, read a book and experiment. If you're living in a cluttered room, in a cluttered house, it's really hard to do focused spiritual work. Think of the clutter as producing static on an old-fashioned TV line. You can get that now with cable and whatnot, and when the picture is fuzzy and the sound are in and you get the idea. That's because there's aberrant energies interfering with your signal. And the actual correct physics term is interference. It's a blending of waves and frequencies from multiple sources, and sometimes that's a good thing. And when you're multiplexing data and sending a television signal and a telephone signal down the same line, that can be a good thing. Just remember to take them apart at the other end. That's what that little filter gizmo is. You plug it in and there's two gazintas there. Yeah, that's the filter that separates the two back out. And sometimes those aberrant signals, those extra frequencies we don't want, stop the flow, just like your phone signal can. And you have a harder time communicating with spirit, with your own higher planes of consciousness, with whatever angelic beings or ascended beings or God that you like to talk to, and you don't do the work. It also goes towards the certain level of discipline that is required in the higher spiritual work. The higher spiritual work isn't for the faint of heart. It's not all because it's scary. There's some of it is. But when you dedicate and devote your life to your true will, purpose, and you put everything out of your life that isn't it, you're going to find many people you now call friends, even family, will be repelled. What is up with that Arlen dude? He grew his hair long and moved to the mountains, and he's not towing the line on all this aerospace stuff anymore. What's up with that? Let's shun him. I went to a funeral. I wasn't even heavy into the shamanic stuff yet. I was just being a naturopathic doctor. And I went to a funeral of a good friend, one of my aerospace buddies. And so there's, 100 people that I know. And then there was me. And I walk in, I say, hi. Oh, yeah, you're doing that natural doctor thing. Yes, I am. Ooh, I'll go sit over here on the other side. See ya. That happened a lot. Few people I got enough of a word in to say, oh, so you prefer if you don't like me as a natural doctor, you prefer the unnatural doctor? You know, the Dr. Mengele types, the Island of Dr. Moreau type of medicine. Okay, fine. No, I was horribly shunned. I've lost contact with most of my former aerospace friends. Be prepared for that. Some of you may have already taken the red pill, and you've already been through that. When I stopped practicing naturopathic medicine and acupuncture and have strictly been focusing on the spiritual side of things and the energy medicine side of things, a lot of my naturopathic friends have shunned me. And that's okay because I don't have anything to talk to them about. Like, there's a frequency mismatch. They're on channel 2 and I'm on channel 487.
Fox News or
Fox News, gotta love them.
They're fear-based.
Well, so is CNN.
No, but I'm talking about your naturopathic.
Oh yeah, my naturopathic friends are mostly fear-based. Oh my gosh. If we're too good at healing people, the evil empire might not like us anymore. Well, guess what? They already don't like you. They just tolerate you. So yeah, you will probably go through multiple careers. You might even go through multiple spouses or significant others. And hopefully, if you play your cards right, you will end up with your ideal spiritual partner. And I highly recommend that. It's kind of cool. The discipline of a daily practice. It's like being on stage 24/7, 365. The play never stops. You're here, you're in video game earth, you're on stage, and even when you're sleeping, we expect you to keep working in the dreaming. You might even have days where you wake up so exhausted, you slept all the way through the night, and you wake up exhausted from the work you did in the dreaming. And then it's like, oh my, time to go to work. Get up, shower, feed yourself, and then do whatever is your work. You got to keep feeding yourself and your family. And I've challenged many people many times to make simple little changes in their life to free up huge amounts of time for doing this important work. Like give up television. Stop watching sports. Stop hanging out at bars and coffee shops when you could be reading spiritual books, or you could be attending shamanic workshops, or fill in the blank.
Doing your will.
It all revolves around, as Bonnie mentioned, doing your will. If whatever activity you're considering isn't supporting you to do your will, then stop it. Just stop it and do your will. Day to day, you should be meditating, you should be journaling. In addition to other spiritual things in your journal, you need to keep track of your dreams. It is a very real phenomenon that there's many ways to analyze dreams, and what does the white rabbit in my dream mean is probably the least important of those methods. You might get chapter 1 today. You might get chapter 2 next week. You might get chapter 3 of a series of messages the month after that, and so forth. And if you never wrote down chapter 1, 2, and 3, and you get to chapter 4, you go, oh man, this sounds so much like a dream I had once. Gosh, I wish I'd written it down. I don't remember it. So it's having that discipline to force yourself out of that luxurious bed at 3 in the morning and turn on a light and listen to your partner complain and moan and write down your journal. Oh, no, not this one. It's the one who flunked. Happened to me.
The blue pill.
Yeah, the
partner.
blue pill spouse, my practice marriage, that was from there. And I hear this from others too. So, yeah, it's to do that. If you say, I'm going to read the 4 required books from the shamanic school by the end of the month, well, then do it. If you only get 1 done by the end of the month, then only commit to 1, but then do that 1. Every time you do what you say you're going to do, you build personal power. It's like your battery reservoir increases. And that's the power we use for transformation and transcendence. It's the power reserve we build to make those quantum leaps. And then we go to work, building more personal power, mastering the new level we're on, finding where all the treasures are hidden, learning where all the bad guys are hidden, and so forth. Master the level you're on. You don't want to rush and find the gate to the next level and jump through it right away if there's half a dozen things you needed to take with you and you can't go back except through rebirth. So don't do that. Don't rush, but don't dawdle. You've heard me say that. Don't waste time on shinies. So this year going forward, in our school, we're having greater emphasis on the discipline of our personal practices. We're having greater emphasis on starting this work of using the human collective consciousness to change the world. None of the people I know, who I would consider colleagues, friends, acquaintances, can look around the world and say, yep, I like everything. I don't see a thing in this world that needs to be changed. I don't know anybody who fits that description. Well, maybe one.
Maybe 2.
I lost track already. Most of us, however, see a lot of things we want to fix and change the awareness and change that human collective consciousness. And that's what we're doing this year. So we have a lot of classes, and there's some classes I offer because you simply have to have them. And then there's a lot more classes that I can offer based on interest and desire of students and potential students. And so if you're interested, you have to tell us. Send us an email. What was that class you mentioned online the other night about XYZ? Well, that would be the geometry class, or algebra. XYZ, that's algebra.
Do you want to say anything about the spiritual essentials and then what you've already mentioned about a healing, a personal health?
Yeah. I've got some I'm going to run down here in just a minute. So I'm going to go over a list of classes that either we have offered in the past and that have been well received, and or things that we could offer, some of which we have offered in the past and some of which we haven't. The big message that I want to get through to everyone, to a certain extent myself included, this year, is to stop putting limits on ourselves.
Yes.
There are no limits to our potential. Just like in the movie The Matrix. Don't try to bend the spoon with your mind. The key is realizing there is no spoon. So there are no limits. So in a way, the biggest shift that's needed isn't out there. Well, maybe over there, but not out there. It's in here and in here. To accept the reality, to embrace the reality and truly understand it, that we have a limitless potential. So let me go down a potential list of some of the kinds of classes. And you might see kind of the levels of information here that we have. And if something triggers you, and you say, well, he didn't say he had a class on this, ask. You know, with my background and Bonnie's background and some of the other core students here, there's probably somebody who's an expert on what you're asking for. And if not, then I know somebody who is. No matter what it is, I'll find somebody who is. And we'll set something up. So Bonnie mentioned a class called Spiritual Essentials. This is a class we've built over the last few years because of it's basically got two categories of information. One is over the decades, going back 3-4 decades, both Bonnie and I, independently until we met, were attempting to plow through the vast plethora of information out there on spirituality and sort through it to find the wheat from the chaff. And most of it's the chaff. And we spent lots of money and lots of time looking at and exploring dead ends. And so what this class is in part is when we first became aware that we needed to go into and enhance our spiritual existence, this is the stuff we wish somebody had sat us down on day one and said, okay, here's the core guidelines, here's the way the universe works, here's what you need to know, and this is this stuff. And then there's a lot of things in here, in that class, that are based on questions that we've been asked at Akadua classes, at nutrition classes. I used to teach in a graduate school for Oriental medicine, and I'd be teaching physics, health-related physics, you know, like fluid flow for the blood and the lungs and electrical conduction in nerves is how I approached it. I have a book. It's one of those being updated on just that, if you're interested. And these students say, yeah, but how do I use this physics stuff for spiritual work? You know things like, well, yeah, I do. I'm just not ready to teach that. And it's not part of this. Oh, no, we want to know, right? Well, no, you need to know what's going to be on the final exam first, and then how to find things out second. You know, I'd be teaching nutrition, and almost always the questions would devolve around to spiritual stuff. So we've collected up the most important questions from these things that, other things that we've taught, and that's in this class. So it's how to shorten your attempt to find a real, meaningful spiritual class. So that's one class. Related to health, and related to one of the 4 required books we have, the book is called The Human Biological Machine as a Transformational Apparatus, or as we sometimes just refer to it as the Human Biological Machine. And it refers to the concept that this physical body, this human primate, is a receptacle and has been infused with a higher level spiritual essence, and we reckon we are the result is this composite being that we all are. Until you go far enough down the shamanic path and you become a composite with more than one other being beyond your own essence. And so the human biological machine is the one and only one you get in this incarnation, and it behooves us to take care of it, and it has to be functioning properly and vibrating properly in order to make the connections to the higher planes to do this work. If your body needs to make neurotransmitters but doesn't have the raw materials for the right neurotransmitters because you've been eating junk food for too long, your nervous system will not function in one of its higher level capabilities, which is to be the antenna system to interface with your higher energy bodies, which we all have, and some of them are developed more or less in different people. So, with all my background in health, I've created a course called The Proper Care and Feeding of the Human Biological Machine. It's a one-day class, and it's a very good, very thorough Cliff Notes version of what I learned in almost 20 years of clinical practice as a holistic doctor, and applying it specifically to the spiritual work. So that's a class that I can offer if there's enough interest. And the students in our school are the ones responsible for organizing and promoting and putting forth a lot of the effort on these classes.
I'm interested.
You're interested. Well, I need someone in the school to step up and be the chief organizer. And we have to sit down and find the hole in the calendar for that. Kind of along the lines of both health and shamanism is I have a lot of information to offer, and Bonnie has some of it to offer, about herbalism.
I'd be interested in that one too.
Long before I left my aerospace career to go to natural doctor school, and long before I left natural doctoring to become a spiritual teacher, I knew a lot about herbal medicine. It's one of the things I came in wired for. And through all my training in naturopathic medicine and homeopathy and Chinese herbal medicine and tiny bits of Ayurvedic, that system is so elegant and complex. I'm kind of just sticking with the two systems of herbology I know well. There's a lot I can teach and share about that. In a way that, other than human touch, herbal medicine is probably the oldest system of human healthcare. And there's a lot I can teach, and that does definitely bridge the gap into shamanism through the use of what is basically plant spirit medicine. Every plant is a representative example of an archetype, a spiritual archetype. And if you learn how to communicate with the plants, you develop a relationship with their archetypes, their spirits. And great healing is possible when you learn how to do that. I gave one brief example this last weekend. about a plant called Devil's Club, not the much more popular and widely available Devil's Claw, but Devil's Club, or the, as it's called in Latin, Oplopanax horridus, is a tonic. It's an adrenal tonic, just like 2 or 3 dozen other adrenal tonics, with the caveat that it has an energy of helping people stand up for themselves who otherwise are having difficulties. Very often I would prescribe this for women, and it would produce amazing results. So that's just one simple example. We have several levels of Akadua classes. Level 1, 2, 3, several iterations of what we call advanced level 3, and then a level 4 class. And the emphasis of these can vary depending on who's in the class. We can do a class that's purely about healing. We can do a class that's purely about consciousness. And that can go more towards the individual consciousness, or it can go towards collective consciousness. We can do classes based solely on,
I moved the carpet. Sorry.
You're fired.
Is it still aimed correctly?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
We can do classes based solely on the higher level spiritual work, not just a broader term of consciousness. So there's a lot of ways we can do that. I can teach classes on strictly the energetic anatomy and its role in healing.
And it's what?
Its role in healing, which is not like an Akadu class per se. It's, I think on that one people would need to be at least an Akadu level 1 holder. Probably level 2 would be better. But if you didn't have the Akadu, there's too much of that class that I wouldn't be able to teach. I have a system of healing I teach called the Human Structural Integrity Field Method of Kinesiological Physiotherapy, which is an extremely powerful healing that I took a system that was given to me that I was the one and only recipient of, and I've added to it, and I've been starting to teach it to others.
That was a good class.
Yeah, several
thank you.
people have mentioned that one.
I would like to see that one again.
Okay. Well, you only got part 1. There's a part 2.
Well, I mean, it's like you need a refresher on part 1.
Well, yeah, maybe. What you need to do most is when I teach you that, you need to be using it. It needs to get out there and get used. I got good at it because, oh God, what year is it? 19? I've been doing this stuff for 20 years, almost daily. That's how I got good. It took me 3 or 4 years to get good, but I was still doing it almost every day. Yeah.
It seems to me like that class could be in 2 parts. One could be more of a divination class, because quite frankly, you have to believe in divination and have some method that you feel comfortable with before you can really engage in the work that you're giving us on a higher healing basis. And it seems like the healing part of it really needs to have some anatomy background, and if we don't have it, then we need to get probably some of that.
I've thought about that. And the reason I've integrated it the way I have is developing confidence in your ability to do kinesiological testing, i.e. using my energy field to test your energy field to get, most of the time, yes, no answers over what's injured, what's hurt, what's in the wrong place, what the problem may be. Is that whole process, I have found, goes a lot easier if you have real practical examples. And so the other half, the anatomy, when that's got more validity, And so when we rewrite that one as the course description, I think encouraging people to have had at least one anatomy class would be good. But the anatomy figures I've created, I think are enough for the vast majority of people who have an interest in healing. Because if you're a massage therapist or a Reiki practitioner or a chiropractor or a naturopath or a physical therapist or somebody who just wants to treat your kids, most of those people can learn the fine details of the anatomy in parallel with learning the technique. So I've struggled with that. That's one of the reasons why I didn't teach it for many years, is because I was struggling with a lot of those issues. So they're all good, valid points. My intent too is to start getting this out. If it's such a powerful healing technique that you don't need any technology for, you can do it anywhere. And if the lights go out and society crumbles, you can still use this technique. So I just want to get it out there. There's classes that haven't been offered yet that could be on the basics of the Toltec philosophy and how to apply that in a communal setting, for families, for business. How do we use the concept of an intent? How do you develop your attention to stay focused on your intent and not get distracted by the shinies? These are all skills that can be learned, and they will get better with practice. Artwork. I have a resident expert on artwork. Mine's getting better. It's not horrible anymore. What was that?
Something.
Something over there, really loud, and it scared Smokey.
Oh, okay. There's a class I've been wanting to teach for several years, and I haven't actually taught it yet. And it's aimed at teaching science for those on a spiritual path. A lot of it I might break that up into a couple of courses. One would be physics, and another one would be astronomy. Astrology is an important tool that many people like to use. Everyone would benefit from. I'm going to tell a story here. When I was an undergrad, I double majored in physics and astronomy. And all of us astronomy buffs would get together and tell merciless jokes about astrology. I can't possibly need anything good in there. And we'd read the historical documents which accurately report that at one time astronomy and astrology were all part of the same science, the same field of study. There was no distinction between the two. And then at some point, the spiritual was separated from the factual, just like in medicine, just like in biology, just like in engineering. And don't look at the man behind the curtain for all that spiritual stuff, right? Well, when I went forward in time and started waking up and exploring the spiritual things, I read my horoscope. I had a couple done professional. And it described secrets about myself that I'd never told anybody.
Surprise.
And it's one of those little aha moments. It wasn't some of the biggest ones, but it was like, oh, well, just like Emily Litella on Saturday Night Live. Well, That's different. Never mind. If you don't laugh, that means you're not old enough. Those
I
of
don't
us
know
who
who it is, but it was funny.
Oh, you should. Didn't you ever watch the SNL back in the original days of the 1970s with the original cast when it was
Yeah.
a good show?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
cone heads and everything.
Yeah. Well, Gilda Radner had a character that was named Emily Latella, and she would come on the Weekend Update, the news show, the parody, right? With the op-ed. What was one of them? Anyway, and the joke was she was hard of hearing. She heard the editorial last week. Now she's here rebuttaling it. And then finally somebody taps her on the shoulder. No, it wasn't that. It was this. And she goes, oh, well, that's different. Never mind. So that was my reaction, basically, when I read Real Astrology. And it was enough to get my attention to go study it. And I am personally not good enough at it yet to teach it.
Maria asked about validity about the Chinese horoscope. She's a water tiger also.
A water tiger.
Yeah.
Okay, the big thing about Western astrology is that it's based on your sun sign. There's some discussion, which I don't know the answer to, about because of the precession of the nodes, are sun signs still sun signs? I'll answer part of that in a minute. But it's on the cycle of 1 year we're looking at in different months. 12 months of the year, there's 12 signs of the zodiac, which correspond to 12 archetypal energies, which is why even if the nodes precess, we're still dealing with the same 12 archetypal energies. That's part of the answer. Chinese astrology is based on, it's 12 years. The year of the rat, the year of the tiger, the year of the
Horse.
horse, or whatever it is. I don't have all of them memorized.
I'm a rooster.
A rooster.
Well, that says something.
So within each year of the rat, year of the rooster, there's 12 Western sun signs. And so there's a lot more variation if you just look at your Chinese sun. It's the year of the rat, but when? You know. And so one of the books we like is called what?
New Astrology by Suzanne White.
New Astrology by Suzanne White. Those of you here in the live studio audience, if you want to look at that book after the show, we can show it to you. It combines them into 144, or 12 times 12, different actual astrological signs. So I may be a Sagittarius, but I'm a rat, so I'm the Sag rat, or the Taurus tiger, or the hippopotamus rooster, or whatever it is. The rhinoceros monkey, you know.
Maybe he shouldn't teach us. We'll have Bonnie teach that one.
I already said I'm not qualified.
Yeah.
But I can find you an expert. Okay. So, yeah, the Chinese system is valid insofar as far as it goes. The Western system is valid as far as it goes. They start getting into some of those longer cycles when they start looking at your, like your Jupiter return, your Saturn return, your Uranus return. You know, there's some of those, especially the outer planets, move very slowly, but they have a very particular influence. And we go whizzing around the sun once every year, and so a year and just maybe a month more, we line up with something. And so some of those planets that go around the sun every 12 years, it gets back to the same position it was when you were born, and then we call that your Jupiter return, your Saturn return. something like that. So we start to get into it there. The system of astrology from the Ayurvedic system, which is part of their health and spiritual system, is called Jyotish. Don't ask me to spell it. Jyotish question mark. Is considered by Jyotish practitioners to be much more elegant and accurate than Western astrology for a long litany of reasons, and what's been lost from the burning of the books and so forth, some of which may be valid criticisms. And that said, when Western astrology is done correctly by competent individuals, it gives very accurate answers. So I won't be teaching that class, but somebody will, and I encourage you to study. It should be one of the areas that we all study. So when you're studying that, I sat in a class once where we couldn't get off square one to learn about astrology because nobody knew anything about astronomy. Remember, that's how we got on this. They didn't know what a zenith was. They didn't know what a horizon was. They didn't know what a planet was versus a star. They didn't know what the phases of the moon were in what order. They didn't know what rising and setting meant, and so forth. So there is a lot of basic terminology from the world that's now mostly captured and described well in the world of astronomical science that I would like to teach as a prerequisite for further astrological studies. There's a lot of what goes on in the world of this work with the energy, with the frequencies, with the higher bodies that is greatly benefited by a knowledge of some basic physics. And no, you don't have to go to a university and take a year-long course in Physics 101/102 just to know the basics of what is a wave, what is an interference pattern, what is a voltage, what is potential energy versus kinetic energy. There's some basic stuff that can be taught and described entirely with real-world examples from the spiritual world, and you can learn it that way. I've done this when I taught physics to Oriental medical students. I customize everything to the world of medicine and biology in general, and Oriental medicine in particular. So I can do that. This altar, we can teach you how to do much more effective altars, how to make your altar more effective in its role as a lens to focus attention and as a communication device with the higher spiritual realms and the macro dimensions. Those are some of the questions.
What about, I would love to learn the knocks in banishing.
Yeah. There's
And
advanced spiritual skills like how to banish, how to invoke.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of that we can teach, and we need people willing to help organize it. Some of which will be taught only within the Toltec school. Some of which will be offered to the wider community of interested, serious spiritual seekers. And they don't have to be on the Toltec path. This altar work, you don't have to be on the Toltec path to do that. You want to energize your altar, each individual altar item with the Akadu energy to make it more powerful, like putting batteries in the Christmas toys and actually turning them on. That's what the Akadu can do. But using the inherent energies natural in these crystals, arrayed in a particular pattern with a particular intent, that alone will amplify your altar work and the results you get with it.
Do you know an author named Franz Barton?
That sounds vaguely familiar.
Maria is asking, is Franz Barton a good author to study? Maria, can you tell us what subject is that? Astrology?
It sounds familiar.
Yeah.
It's not one I've read widely, if at all, but I hear about a lot of things that I don't have time to read that are perfectly legitimate, and I don't know if that's one or not. So those are some of the things that we have to offer. And in addition, for those in the school of now that we're past that dreamer's phase of picking your issue. Now we're in the stalking phase, which is going to go, I'm saying we're going to spend at least 3 months on the planning of what is your new model and how are we going to get that word out. How do we want to promote that to the widest number of people to bring the most effective change without getting somebody else's knickers in a twist so badly that they want to send a thought police to throw us in jail or something because we dared think outside the box.
All the classes sound good.
And I can't teach them all at the same time. And there was a big one that I forgot to mention, which is the Tree of Life. That one's going to be an online course. That is one I want to offer whether anybody else wants it or not, because you need to have it. So the school is going to go through it.
I guess we kind of need to weigh in, especially as the school, as to what another night would be in the week that most people could potentially tune in for, unless you have something that you're already thinking of.
I have something I'm already thinking of, but there is a certain amount of flexibility. So what Bonnie is alluding to is the fact that
Do you need some water?
I never did get water. I'd like some.
I'll get it. One of these days. We'll fight over you.
Ooh, darn.
He's blushing.
Oh no, I'm anticipating.
No.
3 ladies, every man's dream.
Yeah.
Oh.
Never have done that one this lifetime. Thank you kindly, ma'am. The Tree of Life class is going to be a long-term project. It's going to go, once we start it, it will last at least, I'm thinking 3 months, meeting once a week. I'm going to offer this online. It will be a paid course. So we have a few logistical details to work out in terms of how do we restrict access to the video channel. I know the people to ask, I just haven't had the chance to do that yet. And it will have handouts, it will have recommended textbooks, and it's going to be focused on the practical uses of the knowledge of the Tree of Life and the Tree of Life as basically a type of spiritual Rosetta Stone. I'm not a Kabbalist in the traditional Hebrew Jewish sense, where it's very mystical and there's some very good information in that body of information. I'm not a purist from the standpoint of a Western alchemist who follows one of the modern systems of alchemy, looking at the Kabbalah information spelled with a Q. I'm not purely that, although that's probably of the 3 major categories of Kabbalistic study, that's probably the one I follow the most. I'm not looking at it purely from what I consider to be the watered down Christianized version of Kabbalah spelled with a C. The way I teach it and the way I use it is something a little bit different than all of those. So my intent with this is to teach the Kabbalic information as in part from a standpoint of physics, because this is a roadmap to the physics of the universe. It ties in with the Toltec, the way I am doing it, it ties in with the Toltec assemblage point. And it ties in with understanding physics and frequencies. It ties in with the alchemical approach most of all. And it needs to be practical. So there will be a series of, when this comes time, I'm thinking this is probably going to start in the spring. Maybe not right on March 21st, but that's kind of the target date to start this class. And like I say, it's going to be one that I cordially require students to engage with. And it will be open to the outer circle of serious seekers. We don't know exactly how it's all going to work, but we need another day of the week. We may not be able to meet, let's say every Wednesday, let's say, if we were to consider Wednesday, which I'm really not. I think either 3 or 4 of my Wednesdays each month are already full. So I'm using this as a bad example. But if we can find a day of the week where we can all meet at least 3 times a month, then that's what I'm looking for. Based on, with the caveat that weekends are generally bad. So I'm trying to avoid Saturday in particular. Friday nights might be good, although on weekends I have to travel, I may be traveling Friday nights. So it's one of those things that I'm looking for and eager for inputs.
Sounds like Tuesdays or Thursdays.
Well, then there's other reasons why I may not want to be too. Thursday may be the best time for me. I don't know. When I look at the week, it's like, well, I'm pretty full. So rather than just give up and not offer it, I'm willing to change a few things if necessary to make this work. This is important. And in terms of moving into a higher spiritual path, a vertical path, as opposed to the horizontal spiritual paths that most of us started in, understanding the tree of life from a practical standpoint is probably the most important skill you can add, the most important batch of knowledge you can add to your armamentarium. So that's why I'm talking about that. So this work, question?
There was there was a lot of positive feedback back about that. I just jokingly called it the Kabbalah tree of life as a key to the universe.
My working title is a little different.
Right. And
I kind of like that one though.
it looks like there's a lot of positive feedback about the classes. Sarah said that she would put herself in debt forever for all of these classes. Be careful what you say, Sarah.
Yeah, they all sound good.
Let's see.
Okay.
Could I offer a class I would love to see more teaching on?
Yeah.
The Bardo. The chambers.
Okay. That's one that I didn't put on the list.
You've been doing that.
That will probably be under the guise of and or related to the ABD.
Yeah, because I like to know what chamber I am in.
Right.
and how to navigate out of it. And then if we go to circus or
Yeah. You know, let me back up because I know we have a couple first timers on the online audience tonight. What she's talking about is the Bardos. It is a term that comes to us from the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which is very, very similar in content and information to the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the Celtic Book of the Dead, the Aboriginal Book of the Dead, etc. The American Book of the Dead is a reinterpretation of the information that was contained in the Tibetan Book of the Dead by and I don't use this word loosely, the great American shaman E.J. Gold, and that doesn't give him far enough credit. He has shamanically voyaged to all the chambers in the Bardos and looked at the Tibetan Book of the Dead, but then wrote his own description of those spaces based on direct first-hand knowledge. Now, what is the Bardos, you might say? In Western culture, based in Western European philosophy and religion, we have descriptions of birth, life, and death. But we don't have anything in between one death and the next birth. In fact, Western society has gone to great lengths to stamp out the realities of reincarnation and that there are places our spirit is residing when we are in between lifetimes. That the Tibetan Book of the Dead calls that space, a series of chambers, the Bardos. It can also be referred to as the macro dimensions. And yeah, this definitely relates to the assemblage point and its role as a filter. So, in the American Book of the Dead, which we shorten to ABD for convenience, we learn a series of things a series of information that can be applied to help us navigate that transition we call death. Everybody's going to die. And do you want to die a good death or a bad death? So the ABD is a series of instructions. They can be read to somebody who's preparing for their passage, their transition. In other words, they're about to die. But every time we read it for ourselves or others, it's preparing us. When we die and our mind is stripped away, our body is stripped away, we have to rely on habits to be able to navigate the Bardos most effectively. Everyone, when they dies, regardless of their karma, has an opportunity to step off the karmic cycle and into the clear light, if that is their will. Most of us miss the best opportunity, which is the first moment of transition, because we're still fighting to live, or we're fighting to figure out what's going on, and we miss the first bounce, as it's called, which was the easiest time. At the time we're aware something's happened, we're already into the second or third bounce. So learning how to prepare for that is part of the purpose of all the books of the dead. People have come down, wise beings, and given us this information, and the goal is to use it for our knowledge. Use it for our growth and transformation. So the best description of the Bardos we have in the English language is the ABD. And learning that body of information and learning it to be able to teach it, there's a series of courses to become certified to do that, which Bonnie has done. This will be a course taught by Bonnie.
I would love to take that.
And
I'd love to take all
I
of them.
think there's a way of doing it without going through it, it's 12 weeks, right? For to become a formal labyrinth reader for others. But I think there's probably a way of shortening it a couple, 3 sessions to at least get people the basics, so they're not holding the ABD going, well, this is great, what do I do with it? Right. So think about that. That wasn't on my list because she's the expert. It was on the list I couldn't find today, and I had to regurgitate this one from scratch. But yeah, the ABD is an important tool that we use in this school, that came out of E.J. Gold's work. And anyone who's ever been affiliated or heard or known of E.J. uses it. My teacher and benefactor, Coyote the Blind, uses it in his school. E.J. uses it in his school. We were down visiting him over the holidays, and always amazed, always blown away. If you ever have a chance to go down and attend one of his workshops and meet him, you would be foolish not to. You want to go to one of mine? Yeah, take it or leave. Don't miss EJ.
He won't be around forever.
Yeah, he's now 77 years old. He just had his 77th birthday, which was the event we went down for over Christmas holidays. And yeah, he's one of those people who came in enlightened. He's been a spiritual teacher for over 50 years, and his work is amazing. And I honor him greatly. So, rigor and discipline. Without mentioning any names, we had 6 of our Acado students in Paradise, California, who all lost their homes in the fires. And about 2 weeks after that event, maybe it was 3, I can't recall exactly, we hosted an event here for my teacher, Coyote the Blind. It was a high-level weekend of shamanic work, and 2 of those 6 were here.
That's amazing.
Doing the work. It's like, oh yeah, I lost all my stuff, but on the way out the door, I grabbed the ABD, I grabbed Coyote's book, and I grabbed the other required reading for Golden Eagle School. Left all this other stuff, but I got those 4 required. I have 4 required books. I'll go down the list in a minute. That's a serious spiritual warrior. It's like all the goofy stuff that you could have grabbed, and they grabbed the workbooks. That says volumes. They know what's important. And that's what this year is about. And if you're considering a higher level work, whatever work you've done is excellent preparation. And if you're ready to kick it up a notch, this year, this spring in particular, this winter and spring is a good time to join this effort. That window of opportunity, I don't know how long it is, but I've been told that it's open now. Any other questions?
The only other comment was potentially a class about how to handle manipulation, people that manipulate you.
Is it a narcissist class?
The
I need
what
to
did
take
Harry
that.
Potter
I
call
know
that
it's
class?
supposed
What
to
was
be
that
my
called?
family.
The defense against the dark arts.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can do that. We can have a defense against the dark arts class. Was that your question?
No, it was.
No. I'm pointing to a specific.
No, that wasn't my question.
Okay, we'll come back to your question. Yeah, we can have a defense against the dark
We
arts
can do
class.
That should be like thrown in somewhere.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Thank
Think of
you.
a handful.
Are we writing it down, or should I write it down?
You can write it down. You have a list.
Yeah. Okay. Eh. Any other comments from online?
Let's see. Let's just put it out there as serious questions. If you guys have any last minute questions, please type them in. A lot of little comments, but not necessarily questions.
I'm only interested in the questions. Your question.
Just in pertaining to that kinesiology course that I took a while back. It was very handy, even though I went through anatomy and physiology and stuff, to have those referenced for the attachments, insertion origins, all that kind of stuff. Obviously don't have those anymore.
Oh, you need another copy. Okay, see me after.
I just thought about that when we were talking.
Yeah, okay. Any other questions?
On the Tree of Life and the Kabbalah book that or the one that you required me to read, that one.
That's the first one. Yeah.
Yes. Those are all different paths, right? There's this,
Yeah.
and there's this. It's not like you have to take one or the other. You can do whatever once.
It's more complicated than that.
Yeah.
Those are teaching you like the Legos, right? Oh, there's a Lego shaped like this, and there's a Lego shaped like this, and there's a Lego shaped like this, and some are round and some are square and rectangle and funny shapes, and then there's the custom specialized ones just for certain projects, and some Legos have pivots, and some can be used as axles. That's what that book is.
Yeah.
Okay. How you use it is poorly covered in most books, in my opinion.
Okay.
And that's what the class will focus on. So in your case, I had you start there because when you're starting from a blank slate, that's the best starting point I found.
Okay.
I have 2 or 3 other very good references that will be part of the strongly recommended reading list for that particular class.
Can you give us the list of those books so we can have them before March?
Yes. Don't let me forget.
Okay.
Because I haven't started putting that class together yet. I have somewhere between a dozen and a dozen and a half books on this material, and not all of them are equally good. So I don't just want to give you the list of every book I own.
Right.
I know in addition to the book that you're referring to, I have at least one other that will be on the two others rather on the strongly recommended list. And after that, I want to go through them a little more detail and see which ones would be most worthwhile. Because, I don't necessarily want you to go out and spend $200 on a set of Tree of Life books when $50 will get you everything you need.
Right.
Question.
What I was going to ask about that is, I noticed that there's things that I'm more drawn to. So my question basically was, is it kind of like when you're eating your dinner and you're like, whoa, I'm really drawn to this over here? Is it like, well, you should eat your vegetables first because you know that this is something you're already kind of have an affinity for or kind of resonate with?
Well, it's kind of like in that one Dion Fortune book, where she talks about the esoteric orders and their work, and then the training and work of initiate, which are really two sides of the same coin. And you can often find both books published in one book, although they were historically published a couple of years apart. Within the broad category of what she calls illuminism, which can be thought of as connecting to that higher illumination from source, there's two very broad categories. One is called occultism, and one is called mysticism. And most of us will have a natural, logical affinity for either the occult work or the mysticism work. And occult simply means hidden. There's nothing evil or dark about it. There's evil and dark stuff in mysticism and in the occultism, and the key is learning how to overcome that. Just like Luke Skywalker in the original 3 Star Wars movies had to overcome his temptations to go down the dark path. It's easier and faster, but it's no stronger ultimately than the light path. It's just more seductive. and faster. So in the Tree of Life, well, let me just back up. Understanding the Tree of Life as a tool for spiritual transformation is learning the styles of approaches that cover both mysticism and occultism. And yes, you will have a natural affinity for one over the other, hence why most schools make you go learn the one that you don't have an affinity for first. Oh, you want the occult path because it's logical and it's stepwise and it's systematic and it covers everything in detail, and that's your nature. So you have to go at a mystical path, which is what I had to do. That logical path. I found out that logic, which is something Spock never learned, logic is not the highest level of mentation. Mentation, not meditation. Intuition is a higher capability, and intuition is what you learn in the mystical path. So I had several things I had to go do on the mystical side of things to develop my intuition and stop being afraid of my own intuition in order to get where I'm at. Now I'm going, oh yeah, now all the pieces that I had an affinity for but I was struggling with on the occult path, say 10 years ago, are falling into place so easily now. Because I spent that time and I did this other work. So yeah, when you read the Tree of Life material, you will notice that. And what you're noticing is that mystical versus occultism illusion that Dion Fortune shares, which is one of the many reasons why I have you read that book. Question?
I would love for you to make copies available that maybe we could buy of your example of the Tree of Life, because I'm visual, and that would help me a lot.
Okay, you mean big ones like this?
Yeah, or even a small one, 11 by.
Just for your general reference.
Yeah, to hang on the wall as a reference, and
We-
I'd be willing to pay for
We'll
it.
do something. We can find a nice version and have it printed professionally, very inexpensive. There's, in my opinion, out of the hundreds of versions of that you'll find online, most of them aren't useful, and many of them are inaccurate. When you study the Tree of Life material,
Did you hear her?
No.
Intentionally.
Yeah.
Very inaccurate.
that's where I was going. Is historically, the Tree of Life was an initiatory system. That's why prior to a certain date, there's no reference to it. It was all verbal, and it was specifically not written. And of course, modern historians don't like those things, and they would rather say, well, it never existed before this date, rather than deal with the fact that there was a high-level initiatory system passing on verbal knowledge of high-level importance. They don't like those kind of things. And when things did start to get published, certain things were reversed or put in there incorrectly to mislead the uninitiated. And by uninitiated, I mean specifically hadn't gone through the Tree of Life initiations. And other authors come along and have copied that and propagated it forward in time, and they may have had great authority and great reputations on other material, and so people, it's like Newton, right? Nobody wanted to challenge Newton until it was proven beyond reasonable doubt, beyond any doubt, that there were things Newton was wrong about. And today, even physicists don't want to address the fact that Isaac Newton was wrong. I remember about 10 or 15 years ago, some college kid back east was going through, he'd gotten photocopies of Newton's original papers. Handwriting sucked, by the way. It kind of made me feel good. Made my handwriting look good. And he found an error in Newton's math. And of course, Newton's the guy who invented calculus, and this kid found an error
Wow.
in his calculus. Good for him. And so in addition to the deliberate errors that were introduced to mislead the uninitiated, that have now been propagated by people who weren't initiated but were otherwise knowledgeable, there's other errors from people who just got it wrong. And part of the reasons why I've never taught this before is I've spent quite a few years studying and learning, and I've looking at all these different authors, and I've meditated on the answers, and I have what I believe is the correct version, and there isn't a single published author on the Tree of Life that is 100% correct. And I'm going to put my stuff out there, and there'll probably be an error in it. And I'll probably come back in 20 years and go, what did I do that for? And I have trained my ego to not care. When I find the error, you fix it and you move on, right? Oh,
Right.
shoot. Hey, everybody, version 3 or edition 3, I fixed this error, right? Other authors just won't do that. They dogmatically cling to first edition stuff, and doesn't matter how much evidence accumulates that they had an error, they won't change it. They've literally gone to
Ego-based.
death. Yeah, very ego-based. And we all have an ego. That's what keeps us alive. But you got to be willing to learn. You got to be willing to learn that intuition is more powerful than logic.
I don't think I'd ever thought I'd hear you say that.
Oh, no. I've been saying that for years. No, I like to tell the story back when I was still an engineer, and I took the Myers-Briggs personality test, which is excellent. One of the few pieces of useful... What's that?
Stupid.
No. I just found your hot button.
Excellent.
Excellent! The Myers-Briggs personality test is... we'll talk about that. I think I'm going to assign that to everybody. And I'll use that same site Coyote that has a little more of the Jungian archetypes in it.
Right.
And it's free. So anyway, it tells you, are you more intuitive or are you more logical? Are you more this, more that? There's 4 scales, and depending on you're on the left or right of which of the scales, there's 16 different personality types. This was another thing that when I read it, I went, I never told anybody that. How can this be in this book? Right? All about the way my mind works, the way I think, my predilections for this, that, or the other thing, and it's like, oh my gosh, it was so powerful.
It would be.
But, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. It would be good to do the astrology thing, the Myers-Briggs thing, so we could all figure as students where
It
we're
is.
at, and then we know how to navigate better.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what it did for me, right? Is it said, gasp, oh no, I'm intuitive. How can that be? I'm a logical engineer. I believe in physics. I took the test again, and I cheated on questions. You know, kind of like, but I could sometimes I'm like this. I'll put the X over on this side, and instead of being like if 0 is in the middle and 50 is one end of the scale and 50 is the other end of the scale, when I took it the first time, I was out here about 40 on the intuitive side. Like horrified, so I cheated, and I ended up about 20 on the intuitive side. And in here, the actual, you're either on this side or that side. You can't ever get right in the middle, right? The way they've designed the test, because there's an odd number of questions, and you're either here or you're here. And so all I did was come back closer to the middle, but still solidly in the intuitive side. I'm like, oh no. I'm intuitive. I better not tell my engineering friends.
No wonder why you lost your friends.
Yeah. Oh, there's whole stories there, which I won't bore you with tonight. But yeah, they didn't like me because I got the right answers, without having logical proof.
And maybe going on that, maybe it would be good for people that have woundings from being intuitive and not fitting in with your family or society or whatever.
Yeah.
And how also too that I don't want to hide myself anymore, and that you know when you come across I don't believe in crystals.
Right.
You know, like, how to deal with that.
Right. It's like you don't.
That's where I pick
They
it
don't
up.
exist.
You don't believe in this? Wham! Believe in it now?
Yeah, do you have a computer? Yes, well, I guess you do believe in crystals.
That watch you got on, you know how that works? Crystals. Watch the smoke come out there. So anyway, thank you for sharing that hot button. That gives me a lot of material to work with.
I just was astounded that they, for a veterinary technician job, they had me take these silly tests. I'm all, what?
I think that's really great that they had you do that.
It was the most random thing I ever was required to do. Okay, drug test, sit in an interview, whatever, background test, that's fine. And then, oh, take this. I'm like, huh?
They want to make sure that you're not going to leave in 6 months after they train you.
I think I was there for 3 years.
Yeah. That's basically what they're doing. So, any other questions?
Not really.
Okay.
If you want to take all the classes, do you get a discount?
There will always be a way of getting discount. We got to put together. There's more information here on this list of classes than we can fit in a year.
How about a parenting class for teaching children in a Toltec way?
Yeah.
Raised in that.
That's probably going to be coming out of this Toltec philosophy stuff. The children aspect is huge.
Well, that's what I keep getting when I'm trying to think of what. Because I'm like, well, there's all these different things to think of that need to be adjusted, but then the education system keeps coming into play because they're our future, and what happens with them is what happens in the future. So.
Speaking of which, Serenity says hi.
Hi, Serenity.
Hi, Serenity.
Thank you for watching. We enjoyed your visit last week.
And Stellan misses his friends.
And Stellan is missing you. So you have to visit again soon. Okay?
We have to get them together.
Thanks. Oh, they played so well together.
Cried for like 2 hours about Sarah and Serenity.
Tell them that. Did they hear that?
Oh, yeah, so Sarah apparently, Stellan cried for 2 hours after Serenity left.
And Sarah. He
And
said
Sarah.
His friends.
Oh, his friends. Yes, new friends.
New friends left. So we got to get you back up here. Okay, if there's no more questions, we're going to end here for today. And thank you for watching. Stay tuned. Of course, we have the website, which this year we're going to be reactivating the calendar on the website. We have a Facebook group called Golden Eagle Discourses, or a Facebook page. It's not a group. We send out these weekly notices announcing the discussion, and we will periodically have other events that we announce, and we're due for our winter quarterly newsletter.
What about having POG gaming?
Gaming.
Because number one, I can't game on my phone because I don't have a computer.
Yeah.
And I've never done games, but for training.
Okay.
I got that invitation from them today when this came. They gave me what is it, Second Life?
Yeah.
They
Oh,
gave me those
okay. You got an
brochures and
invitation for that. Okay, cool.
Did you have another question?
Yes. Based on a class on kind of like spirit medicine for plants, spirit medicine. Would you be interested or available to teach something along those lines as far as the herbalism and kind of like the shamanistic?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the things he mentioned.
I did mention that. Yeah. And yes, I would be happy to teach you. That's also would be a longer term. You know, that would be a course of study because it's seasonal, right? There's things I can teach you in the spring about planting that I can't teach you like right now when there's a foot of snow on the ground. There's things about when we harvest certain things, how we process it, how it gets used. I do include some of the more biochemical aspects of herbalism, along with traditional uses and energetic uses and the plant spirit uses. So I use them this way when I do healing work, and I can certainly teach that.
Ever since finding out that you did your paper on my favorite is plant in the whole multiverse, then I've been thinking
Okay.
about that, so.
I just had one thing that I wanted to say to all of those who have never really worked with shaman and with these kind of courses that could come up is that this is all need based. So obviously anything can happen. We can create anything we want. But at the same time, there needs to be a need and a collective need within those who are interested to kind of manifest the course. So
No limits.
showing your interest, email us, say, hey, I really, really want to be on the list of, for that particular course, or, just if nothing else, go to the website, ToltecShamanicarts.org, and check out things on there. And then also you can email us at goldeneaglediscourses@gmail.com and just give us some feedback.
Okay. It is my sincere hope that you also engage with my blog on the Golden Eagle Discourses portion of the Toltec Shamanic Arts page. There's a lot of blogs from last year plus. I did take a big block down because I'm turning it into a book right now. A good blog consistent with the themes from tonight that you can read is the one from January 1st of this year, just a few days ago. So if you haven't read that one, I would encourage you to go read that. All right, I think we're done. Thank you, everyone, and do good, avoid evil.